B-Bad and Brandon.
This mirror.
What are you talking about?
You're young,
I'm
mate.
too young.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about
Brando still doesn't have a 3 in front of his age yet.
Wow. Yeah.
you.
Too young, you know.
You got a couple on him on that.
That's right.
How old are
yeah.
you?
64. Yeah.
64, right. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's right.
oh,
I was-
that's right.
I was buggered before you were born.
Oh, fucking good, Zach. A little closer. Lovely.
And have a chat for me now.
So this is just a tester sort of thing.
Oh, no, we're recording.
Everything's
Oh,
recorded.
okay. I better not say about that. I was there before, yeah.
Everything you say is definitely recorded.
Will
Permanently.
be held against me.
Oh, in a permanent means this is on the internet. I don't know
So,
if you know.
Hello. Yep, that works.
Know what that thing is?
We're on the money.
Yeah, which is pretty good, mate.
This is
So
probably the smoothest transition we've had.
yeah, just slide straight into it.
Yeah, I'm gonna sip
Silky
my coffee. Yeah.
smooth transition. So I guess what we do here, we have no plan. The plan is the no plan. We only have one question. That question is you have 21 sounds, so that can include words and sounds, to describe who you are, what you do, or done as well, or are going to do. You could add that in.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And Brando counts them. I fear 21 words is not enough for you.
Ian Harvey, quirky, humorous, loves family, tries to act justly, loves mercy, and walk humbly with his God.
You got 2 words left if you want them. I think that's 1 word left.
Happy being here. That's 3.
Yeah, that was close enough. I like it.
Damn, you might have practiced that.
I got to say that I've been a fan. My wife just loves your podcast. She's seen everyone about 3 times, and yeah.
Does she not have anything better to do?
She used to put it to sleep, but
fair. I would too.
Yeah, but so she's got to actually listen to it again once she hears something really good. And it's a bad thing because if she drives a car, it'll just put it to sleep. You know? But I listened to a couple, and I gleaned from that. I was cagey enough to glean that you'd ask me a question, and so I wanted to say that's me now, but I guess it's for you to unravel what me in the past was and
Who
whatever.
Mr. Ian Harvey was.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shoot the obvious question. What do you do for work?
I know I'm retired. So
What did you do before that?
for most of my life, I was a dentist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And previous to dentistry.
Basically I was born in Bundy, and then I was born in Brisbane mostly.
Another Bundy boy.
Yeah, I went to dental school. I had an army scholarship, so I spent some years in the army.
Yeah, right.
On scholarship, and all years about 5.5 years in the army, 6 years in the army.
What years was army service?
77 to 83.
Yeah, wow.
Where I went to Townsville, New Guinea, Okigabala. I spent a year in New Guinea.
Wow. So they educated you on dentistry through the military.
Yeah, I went for a scholarship in 3rd year. So I was one of 2 people to get an army scholarship. I would have preferred Air Force because it's sort of cooler with planes. And I think they have better messes. They eat better. But the army's like, where it's at. So I got an army scholarship, and they pay all your way. So it takes the load off your parents. And it's really good. Pay your books, and plus you get to join a mess, get really cheap booze. The Victoria Barracks officers mess. I used to buy Grange Hermitage for $12 and St Henry's for $8.
Yeah, right.
Back in '77. Can you believe that?
Oh shit!
Yeah, and
Jeez, imagine what that would be worth now.
Oh yeah, exactly.
If you drank that now.
Well, I kept a few bottles. There's 71, 72, and then even when we drank it, it was kept. My mum used to keep it for me in that bloody linen cupboard or something. So, that particular bottle worth a couple of thousand now, because 71, 72 is a pretty good year.
Army issue 1.
Yeah, and then I also was a member of the United Services Club, which is just across the road from dental school. So I had my own full-size bill table, own bar, and own parking area. So it was just so good being in the army. I mean, it was just. And then you could also buy a car, as most young kids want to do. You could buy your own car, because the first car I ever had was a 1-ton ute. Oh. Dad got us a Mazda 1-ton ute because he figured I couldn't get into too much trouble, go too fast for that. So
yeah, that was I think a poor decision on my parents' behalf buying me something that went quick.
Yeah, bad thing. I could still get up to about 145 down a hill, but
it took the hill to get it.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. And then the military took you to New Guinea.
Yeah, I put in for New Guinea after I went to Townsville first and put in for New Guinea. As a single bloke, you'd only leave you go a year there. They're frightened you'll go troppo if it's more than a year. Married gets 2 years. So I spent time in Moresby and I visited a mate of mine who's a doctor in Ley. I'd go and see, he was on my knife and fork course because what they do is because you don't go to, in those days, Duntroon or Portsea, you have to do a 6-week knife and fork course at Canungra. Which is,
knife and fork course?
Yeah, can you explain that, sorry?
A knife and fork course means that you want to try and get an introduction to the military, looking at how to march, how to do, how to shoot guns.
So the basics. And
just the basics.
Yeah,
knife and fork course.
Yeah, and how to behave yourself in a mess and play mess games. And
is that the official term in the army, knife and fork?
Oh, I just we had, there's probably a lot of slang. And a lot of armies full of slang and sometimes disparaging things, but that's just we all take it in our stride.
Far out. What? Okay.
And whose teeth are you working on in New Guinea?
We mainly the expats. So the expats are mainly Australian personnel and their dependents because the dependents got free treatment. So they all got free treatment. The locals were the local New Guinea people in the Papua New Guinea regiment, which I'd do the examinations and they were always scared. So they'd never come back to have the work done. So
what'd you do to them?
Well, no, nothing. I was really good. And I also used to do work in the hospital. I helped in a head and neck cancer. I used to do
head and neck cancer.
Yeah. There's a lot of oral cancer. Most of our cancer in Australia is skin cancer because the fact we live out in the sun and we're not well adapted. Most of us, or certainly Europeans, aren't well adapted to the sun. So 50% of our cancer is skin cancer, whereas in New Guinea 50% is oral cancer.
Really?
They chew betel nut and lime. Yeah. So betel nut's buai and lime's combine. So you chew this little thing and the lime is very alkaline. It's sort of crushed up coral and it releases the alkaloid of the betel nut. So it gives you a hit called a spark. Just something a spark and you go, and get a bit of a hit from the betel nut. And then it also turn it red. So you see people spitting this red out all the time.
Wow.
And that's the betel nut after you've chewed it with lime and a mustard stick called darker. It's a little teeny stick.
And then give them like a hit of like a drug would.
Yeah, it is a drug. It is a drug.
Right.
It's a drug. And the alkaloid is released when you have an alkaline environment. And it makes your heart rate increases, a bit like that coffee. The guy just gave
the B bad special coffee.
The B bad special. I'm still sort of, I've got a bit of a spin.
You haven't blinked in the last 10 minutes.
No, that's right. It's just coffee, guys. It's not nothing else. It's just.
But it's the B bad coffee. You don't know what he's running there.
Yeah, and so they get a lot of cancer, and so unfortunately, there's a lot of. So it's two ways to treat it: well, surgically or radiation. But firstly, you'd give a drug. You give anti-cancer drugs. So you have a thing called methotrexate or bleomycin, and methotrexate is used now for things like arthritis and things like that.
Right.
And it'll shrink the cancer back, but then they look at what was then they'd have surgery done, and the surgery is pretty basic and pretty rudimentary. I used to assist with the surgery.
Oh, really?
And it's a general surgeon there who did the surgery, and he was just he took for it. It was a really long surgery. So occasionally you get visiting people come in who were specialists in head and neck and things like that. But he was just a general surgeon who took an interest in it, an old bloke, and he had his, he meant well, but it just, God, just, they're like 12 and 13 and 14-hour operations.
Jesus,
something that probably should have took, much less anyway. But then if they had radiation in Ley, they'd had radiation, and it was very rudimentary. And again, it looked like they sort of stuck their head in the nuclear reactor, or they're on that U-23, that U-boat, in the that sort of the reactor. And so they wouldn't often come back for second phase treatment because they see their mates after surgery, and their mates that have hair growing, because you do a little graft, what's called tube graft, where you take a big flap from their head to their cheek, and then you take it from their cheek to around there, because you take their jaw off quite commonly.
Really?
Yeah.
Take their jaw off?
Yeah. And
because the cancer's in the jaw.
Yeah, in the floor of the mouth, the jaw have to do.
How do they eat after that?
Well, not well, but I suppose have softer food and things like that. But that's part of the reason where
soft food, no cancer is probably better than cancer hard food.
Yeah, but a lot didn't like the look and so they didn't go ahead with second phase, and then the cancer would come back because the chemo or the drugs
only keeps it at bay.
Yeah, keep it at bay, shrink it back.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. And then I'd my normal work would be finished by about 11 o'clock because I'd do anything I had to do in the expats, and so then I'd sort of do a bit of admin, and then I'd go for a swim, and then I'd go play squash, and then
sounds like a lovely life.
Yeah, and then but then I'd go to university. I did again some part-time lecturing there, so just to kill time, and then we'd do some surgical work with or some work at the hospital, and then also I'd help out there were doctors would come up there, as in GP doctors, and they do more extensive surgery than they'd ever get to do in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. So they do sort of like tubal ligations and appendectomies and things like that.
What does that mean?
So they took tubal ligations is a sterilisation procedure.
Right.
Where you sterilise a lady and you tie their tubes.
Right.
Trying not to tie their the round ligament, which contains an artery, which is bad. So
that's bad.
As long as you can separate those two, you're generally home host. So I got a lot of different sort of things that we do, and then I go to my mate in Leigh, who was a doctor.
Yeah,
I'd help him with different things and
get out of it.
Things. Yeah. I remember we set an arm once to this guy, and we set this guy break his arm, so we set his arm.
I think you said we severed it.
No, not that time.
That was the other story.
Not that time. No. So I gave him some nitrous because I was like the master of laughing gas.
Yeah.
But we'd run out of I didn't know we'd run out of nitrous, so just breathing oxygen. And so I thought he's going, ooh. And he's a bit of distress. I said, come on, mate, just breathe in. This stuff's really good. Once we finished it, I realised, didn't have any nitrous. So how tough's that guy? And
fuck. So you're setting his bone in his arm.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's better to run out of nitrous than oxygen because
oxygen's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. If they run out, that's really bad because if you breathe just pure nitrous, you can get.
What happens then?
Well, brain damage. There's a kid at one of the hospitals where they got the pipes mixed up and they thought he was breathing oxygen, he was breathing nitrous, and he suffered a brain. He might have died even.
Jesus.
Fuck, can you imagine?
Think about that next time you go to the dentist and they give you the happy gas.
Yeah.
I'll take whatever gas.
Make sure the tubes are the right way around.
Yeah, so we had a really good time there. It was sort of like boys' own annual. I flew planes, and so I had my license before, and I used to fly privately, but also I got to know a lot of the pilots. So we'd often go up in the hills for a weekend. We go up to these little.
We're still in Papua New Guinea.
Yes, New Guinea.
Holy shit!
Yeah. So flying around there is amazing. I thought this might.
What sort of planes?
I used to fly the Aero Club plane, so it was like a little, Piper Cherokee, or was a Cessna one, a tail dragger. Yeah. But we'd get the planes that were used for the cargo or for the because if we knew the pilots, they'd just borrow a plane. I won't say which airline because I might get into trouble. But we just borrow it. We just go and fly up to these little airfields outside of Moresby. There's Tarpini, Waidapi and Tarpini. So Waidapi had a really nice little guest house, and some of the strips were quite hairy. There's a strip called Tarpini where it's called a one-way strip, which means you can only land. You can't in one direction because the big hills around there, and you have to follow a little goat track down the hill to line yourself up to land.
Fuck.
So when you come to land, you do a base leg and you do a final. Well, you can't see the strip.
You can't see it
until you're ready to land. And so you got to line yourself up a little goat track. Then it lines you up on the strip. Then you must land, because if you don't land, you won't be able to sort of pull out and escape.
And you're flying the plane at this point?
Yeah. It's a real with the bigger ones, sometimes not, but the little ones. If we just went up there with a little plane, it was. And everywhere you went, you often were what's called route endorsed. So in Australia, if you want to fly a plane, you just go and work out where you want to go. Say you want to go to Charleville for BNS or Birdsville, or want to go to Sydney. West guys go to Sydney and take a group of people to Sydney. Just get there and fly. But in New Guinea, you if you're wise, you'll get someone to show you what's called a route endorsement. So they'll show you and give you the little tips like
on how to get there.
Yeah, and how to land. Like if you didn't know at Tarpini that's what you have to do, you wouldn't be able to land.
You'd be fucked.
Yeah. The same as when you fly from Moresby to Leigh, you have to fly over the Owen Stanleys, and you have to know where the gap in the range is so you can fly through without having to fly
into a range.
Yeah. So you have to sort of know a little patch of kunai grass, and that's where you sort of fly through.
So you find little marks in the land as reference points is where to go up, down, left, and right.
Well, you get the hang of things because the villages change. They have they might say what might have been on an air chart 20 years ago. They might be sort of 20
down the road. Because they've moved.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah.
Fuck. And when you go on those flights, would someone like teach you the route on the air, or are you just reading the map and they go, we'll work it out when we get there?
Because I was, they'd actually fly with you. And,
right.
They'd say, look,
that's actually insane.
Yeah, and with the Aero Club, they'd also make sure that you'd pay an instructor to give you all the lay of the land. Otherwise, they don't want their plane being crashed either.
Yeah, they probably want their plane back, particularly if it was what do you call it, borrowed?
Borrowed. Well, that's more the airline plane, not the Aero Club.
Yeah. So. How long did you spend in Maudsley?
Just a year. That's just a year.
That's just a year.
Yeah.
So everything you just said was just a year.
Yeah.
Holy.
Yeah.
What was it like over there? Was it it's pretty
great.
Scary and rough though, was it?
Oh yeah. I used to carry a pick handle in my boot of the car in the car. I used to carry a big rubber snake in a basket. That was just by a little bit of time because I hate snakes. So if you get sort of held up by, we used to call them rascals, held up by rascals, you'd hurl this rubber snake at them. I never had to do this, but you always had a plan B. But we used to run through. We used to have hash house harriers. You'd run through the villages. I skin dived there with a lot. It was really good skin diving there. I don't know if you guys have ever done.
What's skin
free
diving?
Scuba dive too. Scuba dive
right,
too.
Yeah.
So scuba diving. I used to just wear togs, a t-shirt, and a tank. Didn't have buoyancy compensators or vests or anything because I was neutrally buoyant in salt water. So you just wear mask flippers, snorkel, strap a tank on, and away you go.
Diving would have been incredible over there.
Yeah, amazing. You dive 100 feet, 120 feet. Obviously,
no dive computers back then.
No, you decompress, still do. Have to do times and that. But the water was so warm that I was in some togs and a t-shirt diving to 80, 90, 100 feet, no problems.
Fuck, 30 meters plus.
Yeah. So,
did you ever get knocked?
No. Only the dental surgery. That's nitrogen narcosis. It's a similar thing to breathing nitrous oxide. So, but you got to be careful. Coral cuts. You get coral cuts.
They get infected as fuck.
Yeah, really bad, and you get really bad things. So, the only thing I got was that we get a little. You get really tan. Any time in my life I was really tan, and you get a thing called tinea vesicularis. It's a little white spot. So you've got this amazing tan. You get these bloody white spots everywhere, and so you got to put Selsun on it. Well, that was the remedy. I don't know if it's true. It's not those things you didn't know whether they worked or not, but you just did them because there's time on it.
How did you get the white spots?
Oh, it's like a little fungal. It's like a fungal thing.
Because
you're wet. No, it's just being because you're in a human environment. And you're active and you're doing sport all the time.
Yep.
You're playing all the time, things like that. So so that's just New Guinea. So a little stuff we could probably talk.
What was I can
tell you quite a few stories about Guinea.
Early date, working on teeth back then. I imagine it was pretty basic compared to what it's like now.
Yeah, we had certainly had the reasonable equipment, but the equipment was fairly basic, and they had therapists there which they wouldn't let use high-speed drills. Like a high-speed drill is the basis of all dentistry. So before that, before you guys were born, they'd have a drill. Treadle drill, and then they'd also have a motor drill with a little cord that would run the motor. So it's a little pulley system, like your little pulleys in the gym, and it was a motorized cord. They'd only let the therapist use slow speed drills, and to drill a hole or a cavity with it just takes forever. It's like horse and cart compared to a Ferrari, and because they were frightened of them hurting. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But it was also a way of excusing the fact they didn't have a lot of equipment.
Yeah,
and and there was only a couple of in those days. In the final year dental class, there was 2 students, so I used to help tutor the final year students, and there was only 2 students. They had a very small dental school, and so it was always hard to get. You had to try and get people in New Guinea to do those things, and there weren't many
people doing it.
No.
So you spent all that time in the army in New Guinea, or you came back?
I came back after a year. Then I came back to Enoggera. Then I spent some time at Oki and Kabbalah. Oki's aviation base again, so I got to know some of the pilots there. And
did you get to go up in some of the planes?
Yeah, I used to. Sometimes they take me up on the helicopter. They had a Bell LOH 206 helicopter, and so the instructors used to try and do their instructor renewal. So they used me as a student. So we go off and fly, and we'd do auto rotations.
And you got to fly the chopper.
Yeah. It was good fun. So again, so one of the perks of being in the Army. And then we'd go to an air show, and they take the Pilatus porters down, and so you get a chance to fly the porter with the other guys. And there was one of the padres who used to be in the local area. He had a plane. He used to have a plane. He used to fly up at Kununurra, and so we'd both go down to the air shows and fly the. Well, obviously they wouldn't. They'd be watching you because you're not actually, But we had some great times. And then in Army tactical flying, it's amazing. Like,
what's that like?
Well, low flying, porter's a very low, slow thing, and so they're very vulnerable. I mean, they sort of just sit there forever. So the only way they can sort of reduce their vulnerability is to fly virtually at treetop level. And so treetop flying is virtually probably 10 foot or less from treetops, where you might even get a little leaf or two in your wheels during your thing. And so they fly over areas that have been cleared of wires, because wires are shitty if you low fly.
Yeah, you don't want a wire, that's bad.
Same with the helicopters. They used to fly very, very low and things like that. So so consequently, once I left the Army, I had my own plane for quite a while, until my wife made me sell it. No, she didn't make me sell it. She just didn't.
She listens to every episode, right?
Yeah.
She listens to every.
Yeah. Shout out Helen.
Yeah. She loves these apps. Yeah. She's amazing. She's absolutely amazing.
What sort of plane did you have?
Piper Cherokee 180D. Yeah.
I want to pretend I know what that is, but
so this is all 4-seater.
Yeah, right. And you could where could you get around on that sort of thing?
It was 180 horsepower, so you could take 4 people and some luggage, and fuel, and go pretty well anywhere you wanted to go.
Sydney, Melbourne, whatever you like.
Yeah, you refuel, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, so go to Sydney, you'd refuel. You probably could go Coffs Harbour and refuel. One hit. But Helen, I met when I met my now wife of 34 years or something. Yep. I met her on her 23rd birthday, and I flew friends down who knew her. Friends of mine introduced us. They were her karate teacher, and they said, I think you'll like this girl. So I flew this guy and his wife down, and she was pregnant with the first child, and we flew down from Maryborough, and there was no plane. Brisbane Airport was shut to all traffic. I mean, all traffic was shut. I was only playing the air. And they said, you confirm you've got visual. Oh, yeah, I'm good. So, fortunately, flying the coast, it's not too bad. And there's no mountains or things.
You follow the coastline.
Yeah, just make sure you didn't get involved in too shit full of storm. But I flew into Redcliffe. I couldn't fly into so I flew into Redcliffe. And then we got a taxi to a party. And that's how we met.
That's how you met Helen at the party.
Yeah. So how good's that? But anyway, she likes planes that have drinks and things like that. And,
a bit more of a social.
So did you upgrade the plane?
Social activity?
No. Well, that's the story. You'll when you talk about as we go further on, you'll see that my life changed. I went other paths. So
yes.
So after I got out the Army, I went to and did other things. So I went through my farming, permaculture, hippie, pitbull phase, or moving away from society, moving away from things in general. So
where'd you move to?
Oh, well,
so you went from dentistry.
No, I still no. So perhaps we should just backtrack a little bit. So with the Army, so I spent another year or two in the Army, and then I got out. I was then in Brisbane, and I started working private practice.
In your own business? Or?
No, I worked for someone else for a year, and then I bought a practice in Maryborough. So that's how I ended up in Maryborough.
That's how you ended up.
Okay, that makes sense.
And my wife's actually from Maryborough, but she was living in Brisbane at the time, so I never met her. So I was in Maryborough for a couple of years with my own practice, and then that's when I had my plane and whatnot. And then I came back to Brisbane, and Helen and I got married, and then we built a house in Brisbane, and I set up a practice in Brisbane City, and I bought
in the city.
Yeah, I was in the city in Mary Street.
Yep.
And then I had another practice, so I was working. I used to do other work, and then again we sort of had the it's like the life in a sense as young people. We had a big architectural house that we designed. Cars, plane, practice, everything.
So just be a dentist and earn all the money.
Well,
there's a cheeky smile there.
No, but we were much like the let's say it's politically we were in the Labor Party, and we were very much tended to be socialist, which is a paradox, although it's not. If you look at look down in Melbourne, Julian Burnside's a Green. He's got $20 million, bloody property portfolio. But Helen was a union officer, so she worked initially in bank unions, and then she worked for academics. She worked with Anna Blyth. They amalgamated the BCAEs and the universities, and she wrote a lot of the amalgamation. Anna Blyth took the credit, of course, but her and Anna worked together. And,
no way.
And
we got to get Helen on next.
Helen worked with Grace, who's a member of Parliament.
A
really lovely lady, and so we knew a lot of the early Labor stalwarts. Hamill, and we were, and that was the era of Goss. Goss, and so, but basically. After we'd sort of, got all these things, I decided I wasn't. I don't know. You ask questions about life, and so I thought, well, there's got to be more. And so I wanted to look at finding myself in, self-sufficiency, permaculture. There's a guy called Bill Mollison wrote this book on permaculture. So I wanted to establish a permaculture farm, and also what do you call it? I got a pit bull. This guy used to bought some pit bulls in from America, and so I got this really amazing pit bull. So I thought,
what's your name?
His name. What is his name? Jeep Cherokee. Of course.
Sick.
Because his grandfather was Crenshaw's champion Jeep. It was probably the greatest dog in the history of the breed.
Wow.
So he was a half Jeep and a half Bass's Red Boy, so it's an amazing pedigree. And so I just liked dogs in general, and also liked farming and liked permaculture. So I had to convince Helen, who had this amazing life, that we had to then move. Well, we're going to move back to Maryborough, because even though I wanted this amazing life, I still realized I had to maybe do a bit of work to pay for it. So I went back to Maryborough, and we bought another, and she didn't really want to go back there because she's from there in the first place. So, and also she had to then go out on this little, prickle farm, and then try and, we had free range pigs, free range ducks. We had our farming practices. All the things that we did are now looked upon as being good ideas, but at the time you regard as being somewhat eccentric and hippie, stupid.
This was going to say, when you're doing organic and free range. What year was that?
1990.
No one's doing that.
No, so
I wasn't even born.
So free range pigs, for instance, these days you go down to the, buy a Goralee or a Bangalore free range pig. You can't pay a fortune for it. We had all these beautiful, happy free range pigs and ducks. Bendelli Duck Farm, we could have made a fortune selling ducks and things. We had all organic. The trouble with back in those days, you had organic, like the chooks that are made for consumption. It takes about 6.5 weeks to grow up, and they just grow monstrously. In fact, even if they leave them too long, the weight of them can sort of, break, their legs sort of, crumple a little bit. So
it's all those good hormones are on.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas there must be. But our things look like some sort of, deep sea racing snake sort of thing. They sort of, had a little sort of shriveled, thought, what's going on? Sort of that failure to thrive, and we thought, come on, grow your bastards. They probably got too much overtraining.
Overtraining.
Brendan, you guys could do that.
Not enough supplements.
That's right. Not some overtraining, not enough supplements. So, and no one pays any of those days. No one would ever pay anything more for it.
So no one's paying extra for organic. They're paying less.
No. Back then, they think because you're a nut, and also because it could be, could be something wrong with it, sort of thing. So we talk about here. We got about 3 or 4 people in it who virtually lived there for a while, just helping us create, herb gardens and, herb mandalas and guilds of plants. So the whole idea of permaculture is a sort of mutually supportive ecosystem that eventually, just supports itself. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But the idea is you have all these little things where the animals
that work together and the animals eat those plants.
And it really, I like this as a system of living where you had this mutualism. It's a system of what I call mutual obligation. I think that I still feel that that's a way in a society we would best be if we have an idea of mutual obligation. And so, even in the simple terms, when someone wants to pull out of a drive, or giving them the courtesy on the road, that's a simple form of
you give way, then someone will give way to you.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a mutual obligation. And then in a more complex, say, without getting into the politics of the vaccination. Mutual obligation is the sense of getting inoculated so that you are, in effect, helping to protect other people, because in getting inoculated, you're 5 times less likely to get the disease. You still may pass it on, but you're 5 times less likely to get it. So it encourages herd immunity. So it simply means that as a society, you're helping in a way. So that's just an example. But anyway, back to the plants. Plants, in an evolutionary sense, species that survive better are ones that are better supported by other things. And so if you've got that extra, so anyway, so we're trying to design all this in this permaculture thing. We used to have, we called them, they were really nice guys. There was a builder and his wife, and there was a couple other guys, and
they just lived on your property.
Yeah, for quite a long time. And Helen thought, when's this going to end? Because sort of, it was just like endless. But that's the trouble with a lot of the theory is it costs a lot of money. We spent an absolute fortune, and then there's no such thing as self-sustaining. Doesn't really self-sustain. You always need energy into the system,
of course,
and other things. Otherwise, things break down. There's a second law of thermodynamics, basically says that things just break down. They move from maximum energy to minimal or to maximum entropy. And so they just sort of unravel. So things turn to weeds, things break down, and then we had, you don't spray your fruit. It's good for a couple of years. Then bloody fruit flies just go, let's hover around. Oh shit, there's stuff down there.
People must have thought you guys are lunatics, not using pesticides and all that kind
absolutely. I wouldn't have, that's right. And also we used to do a lot of non-inversion tillage. So at the time, farmers, and we had a traditional farmer next door. So he'd always burn the ground to get good green pick. So he'd burn all his grass, and then it would then look green, but then he'd burn all the humus, and he'd have no ability to hold moisture. So then when it got dry, his place would look barren, our place looked green, because we were tilling we would till under the ground to create a little air pocket where the roots could go. Then you'd till a bit deeper next time, and then you'd protect the soil structure, so the soil had microbes in it. And today it's interesting that if you want to look at helping the greenhouse and helping the planet, one of the best ways you can do it is to sequestrate methane, because methane's a much more powerful gas than carbon dioxide. And so in paddocks where you have this sort of tillage, there's bacteria, a huge amount of bacteria that love methane, and they eat methane, or they get rid of methane. So in fact, you're actually causing a positive effect by those things. And so that's why proper pastoral practices, where you do rotation and things like that, are actually positive, because people saying, you can't eat meat because they fart, and also because it's too expensive in terms of, but it's not right. You can have practices that certainly can help do those things. But the basically you're looked upon as being an oddity, and then I was always sympathetic to the normal farmer, because they had to make money, and I saw
this would be a hard way to make money
if I wasn't
particularly then.
We would.
If you're organic now, you can charge overs.
But we'd be laughing. We'd go to the market. You see us at the New Farm market.
You'd be at Northey Street Market charging $100 a kilo for your pig.
Yeah, exactly. But but I always respected the traditional farmer, because they had it tough, and so I never judged in the sense that I didn't, I never said you're doing badly, or and looking down, you never have a sense of superiority, because they made a living, and it's not a matter of superiority. That's the trouble, is a lot of times we have these ideas that we're always morally superior, always better, because somehow we're cleverer. Well, we're not. We're all
just doing it this way instead of that way.
It's a journey.
It must have been a bit frustrating to see them have a bit of failure, I guess you could call it, and you're like, man, if you'd just done it this way, you wouldn't have had that.
Although it's still the economic reality that in a transition phase, sometimes you can't do it that way. Sometimes you can't just go one way. In a contemporary thing, you can't just go renewable overnight, because you'll go broke. It's just not feasible. It sounds good, it's lovely, but it just doesn't work. You've got to be practical, and you've got to look at what works. So we had a lot of time and effort went into the farm. We planted 100 olive trees. We planted every sort of plant and tree and fruit you could have.
Did you have more successful ones and less successful ones?
Absolutely. So we planted water chestnuts. So I went down to Chinatown, and they pay a lot for water chestnuts. So we had these little we got earthworks in, and we made an island called Elliot Island, named after our kid. And so we around Elliot Island was all these. He loved it. So we had all these little beds for the water chestnuts, and we planted them all. And we thought, finally I'm going to make money. And it's like something out of one of these movies, where they have all this disaster falls. There's a lovely French movie called Jean de Florette and Man Under Sources. I don't. You should have a look at it, and it's sort of all this disaster befalls this poor bloody tax collector, whatever his name is, who wants to go farming. But so just about ready to harvest, I rang up the Chinese bloody shop, and I I'll take all your take all the watercress to you. Beauty. Next thing, we come out one morning, and there's all these bums up in the air. There's ducks, little wild ducks with their bums up in the air, their heads down, smashing the water chestnuts. I thought, you bastards. Bastards. So
were they your ducks?
No, they're wild ducks. They weren't even male ducks. They're wild ducks, So so there's always something that's gonna.
How much duck did you eat that week?
We had to break out the old spaz. We'll have to break out the old pump action. I can tell you. Anyway, sorry. I'll get the wrath of some of your listeners. So we just weaving in another story, which you might find, because of course, remember the pit bulls. We used to breed pit bulls for a little bit. But
you were breeding pit bulls?
Yeah, for a little bit, just for fun, but only for a while, because there's two sorts of people who have pit bulls, in broad sense, fight people and non-fight people. Okay, so if you're breeding a pit bull for fighting, you've got to fight it. Otherwise, people won't buy pit bulls off you. So so we never fought our dogs. So we would never. They wouldn't buy. They would want to, because our dog was such an amazing dog. His litter brother was Australia's first fight champion. So his litter brother was an amazing fight dog. So had we fought him, we would have got 3 or 4 times the amount of money we would for a pup. But I don't make judgment on people, but there's no way I'd fight a dog. A friend of mine is a mate of mine, and so we bred them because I just liked the pit bulls, and we bought the stock. There's a guy in Brisbane who had this stock, and so I just bought them off him, and so I thought we'd breed them for a little while, just something to do. And then there were some really nice people who bought them, and then they got a bit of trouble. I mean, one of my clients was from Thursday Island, and he rang us up and said, "Oh, the dogs have gone wild," and they're sort of getting into trouble and killing a few dogs down the street and that. So they can get into trouble, but there's no. I've got to preface it. There's no bad dogs. There's only it's just you've got to be able to control the dogs and things like that. And pit bulls, they're not like a bloody land shark, or they're a dog basically, and they're nice dogs. So, but because I wouldn't fight them, I'd often get fight people ring me up and they want to have a look at him and so I'd never let them ever come to the place. And I remember one guy. I met him on the highway outside of our place, and I had a bloody gun in the glove box. So I thought, oh God, just in case, and we
had a rubber snake too.
No, they used
Australian rubber snakes don't work.
Taipan, because I had a taipan. He wasn't a herpetologist. Just my luck, he wouldn't be a herpetologist. He'd say, what's this?
Why are you throwing a rubber snake?
Why are you throwing a rubber snake at me? Good point. Yeah, good point. No, we didn't do many rubber snakes then. And so I met this guy, and he's all impressed with Jeep and things like that. And I asked him what he's up to and things like that. And he was going to go to a fight meet in Moree or something, and this and the other. Anyway, just through the channels of people and things like that. This bloke ended up, I think it's about 6 months later, I said, how's blah, blah, blah. Oh, he topped himself. I said, why? He said, he got in big money to some bikies, and he was in for a lot of money, and he topped himself. And I thought, oh God. And I thought,
we've all been there.
I thought, well, it's a pretty glamorous sort of a sport, and so I'm not, again, I'm not decry, but I just, we weren't, it was something we'd never ever countenance, because it's, people who fight, they have just hundreds of dogs and dogs and dogs, and they just get rid of them if they're not game. So gameness is what's called a polygenetic trait. So it's easily lost. So when they breed pit bulls, they don't breed them for the way they look. They breed them, in fact, they're game. So they won't give up. They just go, just keep on going. It's like, and it's not the size, you get this little dog and the big dog's trying to, eat it or kill it. And it goes, what have I got to do? This thing just won't give up. Just keeps going and going. And they're just amazingly game. But they're really good dogs. And Only once they had a bit of you had to watch them, and we'd never let them alone together. So we'd segregate them when we went away. But otherwise, they would run around the house. We'd have 3 or 4 around the house.
Wow.
We used to sleep with a couple.
Make a good guard dog, I bet.
Oh, we'd never have any troubles with any. We just let all the doors open and things like that. And
you'd have no one coming around your place unexpected.
Jeep used to be he was a good dog, but he was he was respectful, but it didn't take rubbish. So I had a sales rep stay with us once, and the sales rep said, "Oh, what's these pit bulls?" I said, "Don't touch him around the throat and don't touch him around the neck." And Glenn got full of piss and said, "They're pussy dogs." And so he touched Jeep under the throat, and it was just like light. You'd never seen anything so fast. He just jumped and snapped about a millimeter from his face, and you see the colour drain out of this guy's face as this dog. It was just like he went, and just snapped at him, and he just went. I said, "Got the message?" He said, "Yep, got the message." Another time we had.
I bet he never did that again.
We had a mate of ours who had the local gym. We used to be quite friendly with Reese, and his Reese was a Kiwi, Reese he was a good football. He said what's the second stream for the All Blacks, or like he used to say, whatever the second. But I think most people's mums in New Zealand have probably done the second string for the All Blacks. But he was a good player, and he in Harvey Bay was like a legend. He always been in the paper and that. So we had a big night one night, and he'd been drinking, and he came later, and we didn't know it, but he overturned the car just outside of our door. And he was knocked out. So eventually he sort of stumbled into the house and said, I think I've been asleep for a while. And so we all went to make sure the car wasn't going to catch fire because of the leaking petrol in the battery and things like that. So we left Jeep with the guests, because I had quite a few guests, and Helen made all these desserts.
Yeah, nice.
And so when we came back, they were all looking like that. I said, "What happened?" They said, "Your dog ate all the desserts." I said, "What happened?" He said, "He hopped on the table, and every time we went to say something, he went, and ate each person's dessert." So he certainly put it over you if you let him.
If he knew we could stand you down, he would.
He'd stand you down.
Well played, son.
Yeah. So
that's insane.
So we had.
You guys weren't there, so you could
that's
step up.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they're lovely dogs. I tried once to make him in the States. They have what's called catch dogs. So a catch dog is a dog that will run after an animal and hold it, catch and hold it. So you say, run, cold, catch. So I thought, okay, maybe you could be a catch dog. Something bigger. Although they weren't real good with cattle and things like that. They sort of chase cattle and horses and things. So you'd have to be careful, not to let them run wild. In fact, and they'd actually chase cattle to the point where they'd actually jump into the river to get away from them. So that's reasonably stressful. But anyway, Helen and I made a mistake of letting him see if he could catch a goat. So we said, look, try to explain it to him that we want him just to catch the goat. And
not kill the goat.
Not kill the goat, just catch it.
How do you tell a dog to just catch it?
Oh, well, there's this training. We can't go into the training.
Just sitting down, saying,
there's ways you can train it. Use a little stuffed animal or something. There's different training techniques. I won't go into that now. But anyway,
but he killed the goat.
No, he never killed the goat. But unfortunately, he grabbed it by the leg, which we wanted, and he held it. Everything's perfect. But he held it a bit too tightly, broke its leg. And so we thought, that's bad. So the goat obviously ended up dying because we had to kill the goat. But he did exactly what we wanted, held the goat. Everything's
held it real good.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of soft mouth, hard mouth. Retrievers and those dogs, what's called soft mouth.
Yeah.
So when they pick up the little duck.
Yeah.
Pit bulls, hard mouth.
Hard mouth.
Okay.
They just smash it.
Okay. Yeah. So
what does the goat taste like?
Oh, nice. Yeah. We had
that goat, yeah.
Nice, good. Make
Did
curry.
You eat that goat?
Yeah, goat curries are very popular.
Yeah. No, we used to eat it. We used to butcher all our animals and
Did you?
things like that. It was better in winter because you'd do them at night time, hang them in the tree, and they'd and then you'd do them in the morning before the flies started to come. But then when we got more sophisticated, we'd hire a little cold room.
Yeah.
And that.
How'd you go butchering everything yourself?
We'd have not real good. I wasn't particularly skilled at cutting up animals because you'd be shown sort of thing. So a neighbour, he had some training and his brother had some training.
Yep.
So We could, but I was never quite sure of every cut we used to do. But you'd always have local people who would help you with those sort of things.
You got by.
You got by, yeah.
Okay, so just to double back a little bit, you said you bought the farm to kind of like find yourself, find more to like. Did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, good, excellent point. Yeah, no, not really. So what happens is that we always do this. So
you really built that up.
Yeah. So no, not really. So what happened was
we had very enigmatic.
Yeah. Well, that's right. There's a story of Faust, and Faust, Mephistopheles says, he has a pact with Faust. And he says, if you drain the swamp, we'll feed the hungry. Well, sometimes you make a pact and you think you can drain the swamp, you'll feed the hungry, but it doesn't necessarily work as well as you'd like. So things change. So we had a child, and then at about age 5, he started to go to school, and then he started to go to school. For some reason, we put, instead of setting we still had to go to Maribor. We decided to make it even harder. We'll send him Harvey Bay, and so he went to a school and had buses and things. In the first 5 years, he loved the farm. It was just like boys' own annual. We had sort of pontoon boats on the river, because we were right on the river, on the Mary River, so we were able to irrigate out the Mary River. And
nice.
Yeah,
Mary River's lovely.
Oh, it's beautiful. You could fish. We could catch fish. You could do a platypus in the Mary River. There were echidna. We had koala, we had all manner of animals. It's just like paradise. It was just beautiful. And for a young kid, you drive tractors and shoot, and so he loved it. But anyway, we sent him to Harvey Bay, and then I got involved in the school, because we thought, as a parent, it's interesting as a parent, and I mentioned in my blurb intro what was important to me, and I mentioned family. Family is very important, and in a diversion, it's important in the sense that family meaning just a unit of people. It could be just 2 people are a family, and they're friends, and they work well together. And I think it's important. But it also can be a big group. And one of the things that's amazing about training at BBAD's gym is a real family sense about it. It's amazing. And I go along as some old, and people come up to say, hello, how are you? And Hazel the other day, all sorts of people. And they're very, and so what I'm saying is it creates like a family sort of atmosphere. So, but as family, it's very important, because as parents, you want to try and do the best by your kids. So we send him to school, but then we want to get involved in the school, because one of the outcomes, if you want to try and have a kid succeed, you try and involve yourself with things, and even to the point of going along. Helen used to go along, she'd go along to help in the class, see what was involved, to see how the class was being taught and things like that, which is important. And they got involved in the school board, and eventually I became the chair of the school board. And so I was school chair. So I was chair for about 6 years. So and in that period, we tried to obviously have the best environment for everyone, and also, in a selfish sense, you want to have your kid do well and succeed there. So that meant more time in that area. So it's like and then consequently, we started to move to town, and we had a place in town. And then Helen's, my wife's dad, he used to go in 3 days. It was like occupational therapy for him on the farm. He loved it.
Loved it.
But he was starting to get old then. And then so it became a point where, where you just basically had this amazing thing, whether you thought they'd bury you, and then your life perceptions change, because you're engaging the real world again. Like I sort of was opting out of the world to a certain extent, because I thought that the salvation lay in, but in actual fact, salvation lies in each person doing their own thing, but engaging in people. And in their own way, talking and saying and doing and being nice people, because that then creates a ripple effect. But you can't change the world by being a hermit or being an isolationist sort of thing. So if you don't like the way the world is,
got to be involved in it.
Got to be involved in it. Yeah.
So you talk about salvation.
Yeah.
As in, like, obviously preserving yourself from harm. Did you find that? I was just really
because that's an all-encompassing word. It can be a religious connotation. It's more salvation to me is more personal. In other words, you're finding yourself, I suppose. In other words, and so it's more an individual. In the term, I'm saying that I thought that in doing this sort of permaculture and also I didn't like where I was going before. In other words, I thought the world was too commercial. The world was too obsessed with material. And
I think our Western culture could be. So I would agree with that.
Oh yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I just thought I could find better, more meaningful ways. It was a bit like a retreat. In other words, some people go off and do a retreat, and then
you started a farm.
Yeah, that's right. Because throughout the years I'd involved myself with Western, Eastern, lots of religions. So and when I said in that context, to humbly walk with your God is a very individual thing. It's not necessarily because it's not someone else's necessarily, and it's a lifetime of refining, and also it's a thing where I can't it's not subject to conversion. So in other words, what I've decided in my life is not something I want to necessarily convert anyone else over to, because it's me, it's a journey that I've been on. So it's my little journey, I suppose, and it never ends, it continually goes.
100%. I like that a lot.
And the journey is always changing.
Of course it is, absolutely. And the landscape, and you adapt. So you have principles, and hopefully those principles help guide you through the landscape. And those principles are things that help you navigate, because those principles gives you some certainty in an uncertain world. So
100%.
So it needs some
faith to rely back on.
Absolutely, because you can't go through all life without any faith, or without any principles, or without any feeling that there's something better out there, and there's something more than you and more than other people. I think we all want a big. We're hardwired for something
100%
bigger. Yeah.
What we might do is, I'm just going to quickly hit stop on this for a sec. And I reckon, because we can go for ages. You got time, don't you?
Yeah. But I'm going to check my phone. If is that all right? Can I check?
We're going to hit